Okay, let's see. Ah, there we go. Okay. Uh, Hello. I am today sort of finishing out the save load system. Well, more the save load system is mostly put together. Let's go over some stuff that I took care of. So the save load system is mostly taken care of. I can just show the tasks. Um, the save, yeah, it's basically done. It's just I'm working still on the integration of the persistent character. Um, so how the persistent character's data flow interact with the save load system. So my mind on this is I need to get it to, of course, save and load when the player wants to save and load, but also it should do um, a temporary saving and loading. Now it comes down to just a question on preloads with Godot. Uh, the question on preloads is you have this, which I believe Godot is saying that this is the equivalent to, where is it? Oh, there it is. Autoload is the equivalent to what is called a singleton pattern. I don't know if that's what it's doing, and I won't be able to test it, I think, not today. Probably tomorrow. But the idea is fairly simple. It's that with a singleton pattern, you have persistent data. Now, in Unity, I wouldn't normally use a singleton pattern unless I wanted access to a specific class consistently, um, without having to like call up the entire class. I can just get an instance of that class from the singleton. That is a singleton. Um, but normally I would use the a multi-scene workflow. So effectively everything that I wanted would already exist in a separate scene. And I just wouldn't unload that particular scene. So I think this could actually operate the same way, where I don't know. I legitimately don't know. I have to do some studying on that one, I guess. I wasn't planning on hitting scene transitions, but this came up as part of this. But the idea is that I'm not sure if auto load makes this data consistent, right? And I'll have to test that at some point. And the reason why that's important is because of this stuff over here. So if this is an auto-loaded class, so if this is something that is going to be loaded every time, then that means that this information is going to have to be cleared, or rather is cleared. If it if it's not, right, then I don't need to clear this, but I do need to clear this. So let's go into what this is. I try to make my naming as self-explanatory as possible, but naming is tough. So you have persistent entities, and we have active entities. I've implemented active entities. This is a new dictionary. So the only thing this is really going to be here for is to get the entities that are here that are presently active, right? So I've also created an persistent entity manager class. Where is it? Yeah, this is right. This is the player manager, right? So I've created the persistent entity manager, the player manager, and I think there's just a regular instance entity. Yeah, right. So the idea here is, let's go to the scene for a second. The idea here is we can have and that player is going to have a spawn point. And well, sorry, this isn't actually the player though, right? This is just something that's going to be the parent of the player. The spawning of the player is controlled by this node though. So this is where the player manager is, and it's going to always want to spawn it at that spawn point. So I can move the spawn point around wherever I want, and wherever I move it to, once I run, once I call the, it's actually a signal. But once you send the signal to that from here, let's go back to scripts for a second. But once you set the signal from, where are you? The persistent data manager. But yeah, so where is it? Once I send the signal here, which is, this is going to flag ready. I also discovered this. I'll go over what that is in a second. But it's going to do my send find player manager, and it's going to send itself. And then once it does that, the player manager, yeah, I can explain it here actually. So enter tree. Give me 1 sec actually. So this is going to then, so yeah, let's explain this first. So enter tree, I think, so far it's been operating this way, but I think enter tree is called before ready, right? So I can use this for getting this information, and I can get the node, which is always going to exist because this is one of those preloaded things. So as soon as the scene begins, once the tree begins, we'll call it. I really don't know why they call everything scenes. It makes it a little bit difficult to communicate to anyone who's not very clear on how Godot works, because they're preloads. They're more, Unity would call them prefabs, but in this case in Godot they have scenes and also prefabs, and they call prefab scenes. So it's just a little bit confusing, but effectively this scene or node is always there, right? And so the tree is kind of like the actual scene. So think of a tree as a scene, and the nodes as, once you get to like the node level, you're dealing with prefabs effectively. But in effect, they're all scenes, right? Kind of. Anyway, so enter tree seems to be firing off first, then underscore ready fires off second. These are automated functions within Godot. The data manager is then going, or this class, the player manager, is then going to connect to the find player manager, which is this thing. Let's go back to this for a second. Right, so this is this, right? This signal right here, which takes in one argument. Now this is optional. I like to put it here just so that way I know if I come back to this code that this takes in an argument, and then I can just look down here and find out what that argument was. So if I like wanted to replicate the code, I'd know that I at least need one argument. So player manager, right? So it's going to just connect. So now when this is what I was saying, where I was not absolutely certain if preloads store data or if they're just reloaded, or if Godot has some special way of handling that, because it's firing off ready once you enter the scene. So I won't know until I make a second scene and do a scene transition to test that out, that theory out. And there's other ways. I'm not too worried about it, but there's other ways to handle this communication. And then, so this has built into it that it wants to, whenever this gets pinged for whatever purpose, it should only ever get pinged once, which is when the data manager says that it's ready. This is going to then say, okay, first off, data manager, which is the information that the data manager, the argument that the data manager passes, I want to set the player manager to be myself, because each scene can have its own player manager, right? So the idea is that the data manager needs to find out in this particular scene what is the player manager. And so I just say, okay, data, the player manager is me, this. And so that sends it back. And it's going to do other things. I'm going to get back to it. This is stuff that I kind of just ended up getting into the heat of the moment and coding up last night after I finished streaming. But this is basically now going to just say, okay, let me find the spawn point. Now, the way that get node works is very, since this is here, this is on the player script, the player manager is on this player node. it's going to just go to its child and get this. That's just how this works. It looks through the children. You'd have to like do something like this to get it to go to a higher level and then look for the child in that. I hate that this is how this is, but I mean, I haven't found another way, and my understanding is that there is a different way, but it's a very expensive call. Which I don't mind making since this is just at the very beginning, but I have to look up exactly like the return types and what exactly it's doing to see if it fits my needs. But so then I'm going to say, well, this is a single player game, so I want to check to see, hey, do you already have a child in you? Which it does. It's going to have the spawn point, right? But if that child is less than 1, which it should be, I think the spawn point isn't going to be there quite yet, then it's going to do a load on the player, right? And once it does that, actually we can do this. I don't like this. So instead what we can do is... No, actually we have to do it this way, I think, for now. I'm going to set this to 2, but I don't like having to set that number. I want it to be something a little bit more modular than that. Maybe we don't even need this at all. But, yeah, so the idea is that this is going to fire off if there is just a spawn point in here, then this should just fire off. Hey, I want you to get the player from data, which is this thing right here. And then I want you to instantiate that player as the node, player node, which is cached up here. And then I want you to set the global position of the player to be equal to the spawn point of the player. Right? And that's what it is. Also, where did I get? Yeah, so here I also got the spawn point. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. So, yeah, I was pointing that out. So basically this is insulated, and this should be as much as this code is ever going to be. I want to keep it as tiny as possible. It shouldn't do much, right? Because all this handles is really just the player's situation in the current scene. That's what it's supposed to manage. Um, it's not going to take care of a lot of other things. The persistent data manager is supposed to handle any data that is related to a persistent class. In scene or not in scene, it doesn't make a difference. It wants to take care of all of it. So, yeah, so I already explained this, but this is pretty cool, right? So this seems to fire off before this, I think. I could simply test it out, but I'd probably get errors since I'm in the middle of something else. Um, yeah, and you see here, it's going to populate the player manager. And then this is something that I'm working on right now also, which is the on-scene load, which is, again, it depends on what's happening here. Because when we exit scene and when we start the scene, right, we need to, in Unity, I would have done a multi-scene workflow, and I would just put the player on the scene that is never unloaded, and then just continue to, go through different scenes and load different scenes that way. The player never really has to worry. We never have to worry about loading or managing the player's data until we actually save the game. But that's not the case here. In this, we're going with a more classical approach to how I understood, or how they normally teach you um, about handling data, which is that as you transition between scenes, you have to save the player's data, and then when you go into the next scene, you're loading player's data. But in this case, because this game, in my mind, is going to have many, many, many NPCs, the idea is that I'm going to be needing to load all of those NPCs' data, right? So the question is, do I then need to save all of those NPCs' data every time that we go between scenes? And I don't think we do. I think that what we want to do is we want to save only the player's data as the player moves around through different scenes. Um, And it again, it comes down to, well, is the persistent entities persistent? Is it actually persistent, or did I just name it like that because I didn't understand how auto load worked? Which I think it might be the latter. So if that's the case, it's not too bad, right? Because I saw something where they were saying that Godot does have a singleton class. So the question is, well, how do I make that? Which is part of what I might have to hit today. As far as this goes, though, we're going to finish up this part of the script, which is what I was up to. I did other things. When we encounter them, I'll just share them with you. But the idea is here. So we've made a few changes to the get entity. It isn't as small as it was before, and it's still growing. So it's a pretty simple process. This part over here is one part, right? The idea here is we want to check first, hey, do we already have, so does this have an ID, right? If it has an ID that matches, that's in the persistent entities, and the ID is not some blank or null or just a string that has nothing in it, then we're going to move down to here and we're going to do a check to see, well, is this entity already active? Right? Is that ID already in the active entity section? If it is, then we're just going to return null out of this. If it isn't, then we do active entities. We set the active entities, or rather, we add this thing to the active entities. So we don't have duplicates of the same character running around. Because I think later on I'm going to even add things into this, like the sprite of the characters, like just all of that is going to be in here. Uh, the this part I'm just doing this for to make my life a little bit easier. I don't want to have to keep typing this part over and over again. So this is the player key. This is the scene key. This is the same thing that's over here. Oh, let me go over this also. So apparently, it wasn't as perfect as I thought it was. So what happens is that when you convert back from JSON, which is what this is, originally I had this just going straight. Current line is going to be, or persistent entities is equal to the current line, right? That's originally what I had. And I was bumping into major problems, and I was doing tons of reworking and testing, and you can see some of it still is here, trying to figure out why the heck is this thing not finding the key. Remember, yeah, actually it was in stream that it happened. I just gave up on it and moved on. I found different ways around it. But then I went back to this, and I realized that there was a chance what happening was it was converting it to a string. It was converting some of the keys to strings. Now, that didn't matter for the first one because that was a string, but for the second one, this is an integer, right? And for the sake of how this works, it didn't throw an exception because, like I pointed out, dictionaries are like mutts in this. In GD script, they can really just take anything, right? Even if there was something else before, they'll take something else later. It's really interesting how they did that. So I have to, when I go to this, so when you look at this, the E portion of this is a string. So I have to actually cast it to being, and it's interesting. I didn't know that they had this in this still, but it's nice. In Unity, it's a little bit different. You'd actually put the parentheses, if I remember correctly, around the int to cast I think no, I think it's the same. I'd have to do it in Unity again, but or in C sharp. But basically, this is called casting, where you're taking something and then converting it into a different type. So this is a string. E is a string in this case, even though E originally was a int, because these are ints, these are integers, right? So like if I think, does it show it? Maybe to show it. Oh, I also discovered something else. I'll go over it in a second. But basically, uh, so E in this case is an integer. I'm sorry, a string, and I'm gonna in this case turn it into an integer. So then now when I push this, the new dictionary, into being this, right? Because what this does is that I'm iterating through. I hate the idea of doing this, but you know, you have to do it at some point. But I have to iterate through all of the lines inside of that dictionary. And then for each line, I do a conversion of the second key. The first key is fine. The second key is what I need to convert from a string to an integer. And then I push that converted information into being the persistent entities, right? And that's allowing me now to get access to the persistent entities after it's loaded as an integer. I can just use enums to get access to that specific key. It makes sense to the compiler now, right? Which is an interesting thing. I mean, it's kind of part of what some of the missing components of, I think, Godot. Like if it's just missing the thing that would have said, "Hey, you're trying to convert an integer to a string," kind of situation in that case, right? It doesn't tell you that until you actually run the game with that. Which I believe, I mean, maybe it did and I just didn't notice it, but I did not. It wasn't very clear to me until it just popped into my head that that's a possible thing that was happening. Um, I think sometimes it does tell me though, so that's why I'm kind of second guessing myself on that. I created a new function, which is basically this used to be inside of here. This used to be the entirety of the second part of this. So I took it out and then I made it a generate new entity. So this should only ever fire off now in the case that we just don't have this. We don't have any entities that match the criteria that we need when the get entity is called, right? So there's two situations. So there's the first situation where the entity does have an ID already. And if that's the case, then we're just going to say, all right, if you have an ID already and you're calling for me, then I want to check to see if you're already active, right? Because if you're in the scene and active, then why are you calling me? There has to be a specific reason. And if it's the case that maybe I have a different script that wants to create or wants to get an entity, right? An entity's information and then like create that entity for some other purpose and it doesn't exist. This is not being called specifically on the entity itself. It's being called for data purposes, maybe like making a visual representation of the character pop up in a menu or something like that. I don't know. But basically, this will allow me to then say, okay, is this guy already active? Right? And if he is, then we don't want to do this. All right, because this guy's active somewhere else. So we don't want to have like a duplicate of him running around. Otherwise, if he's not, then we add him to the active and then we return the persistent information. And then now, if the other case happens where we actually are just saying, okay, we have a blank, like in this case where I make a character or where the player manager makes a new player, the player has built into it get entity, right? And so now what I have to do is make the logic for the else because that doesn't have a persistent data. So the first thing, what it does have though, is that in the player script itself, it sets is player to true, right? It's kind of the benefit of inheritance. I can just go back up a step to the persistent data and then set that to true. And then later on, I could have like NPC class and it will just leave that false. So if it's true, instead of going the rest of the way, what this will do is I set up a if there's any data found, and if there was data found, or sorry, and then we're going to iterate through it. So then we're going to go through the persistent entities, and we're going to say if the persistent entities player key. And so we just left this like this, which is basically going to say if the player key is true, right? If this is true, then the found data is going to be equal to this entity. And then we break out of this for loop. And once we break out of the for loop, then we do a check. Hey, did you find anything inside of the for loop? And if we did, we return the found data. All right, so this allows us to first, before we start generating a new ID, to search, to query the persistent entities. And then after that search is done, we can then just return whatever we found. And if we found nothing, then we'll go back to just generating a new entity, right? And we want to do it this way, for obvious, I think, reasons. We don't want to keep making a new entity every time the player starts a game, right? I think that's very important. So, yeah. And then the next thing is else. So this is if the player is, if this is not a player, right? So first we're going to do this something similar where I think we're going to do var found data, right? And then we're going to say for I in persistent, all right? And then we're just going to iterate through it. And what we're actually going to check here is a couple of things. One is we want to make sure that the scene that whatever the NPC is that we're looking for matches. So in this case, we don't actually care, all right, about which particular NPC we're looking for. All we're trying to do in this case is simply go through the persistent entities dictionary and find every entity or a entity that is in the current location. So that entity should be in the current location, and that is not the player, right? And then we need to know also if active. I can just copy this one actually. We need to know also this, right? We need to make sure that active entities does not have I. All right. So if the active entity has that, then we will just return. And now this is weird. Continue. Okay, there we go. So right, if the active entity has this, then it should just continue through. And what this means is that it doesn't come out of the for loop, right? Yeah, it doesn't come out of the for loop. Instead, what it's doing is that it'll continue to the next I in that or key in persistent entities and just continue that way until it finds something, right? Or rather, it'll continue until the end of the for loop. So now, if that's if it has. Now, if it doesn't have that, then what I can do is persistent entities. So we need a situation, right? So this is a situation now where we have a matching current location It's not the player, and it's not active. So what we do here is we say active entities I is going to be equal to this, right? And so now we're adding it to the active entities dictionary. And once we do that, then we say um, hold on. Be consistent. Found data is equal to, and this. Okay. And then we say we come out of this. Then we just break. Yeah. That's what I forgot over here. But my head is like doing this. So we need to put this over here also. Okay, good. Yeah, that's better. So in this case, we're going to say if the entity is the player, um, so instead of doing that, if active entities has this, then we break. Right. Right? We don't want, so if this thing is already active, then we break out of this. We don't want to return anything for that. Otherwise, or rather, it's going to return, it's going to say it found that. And then, no, something is weird about this one. If the persistent entities break, if we have that, if active entities has a key, then need to think about that. I think what I want is the active entities to, if it has it, I obviously want to stop, but I obviously want to stop. Actually, hold on, let me fix this real quick. I could have, yeah, you can't return null with this, so instead I'll just do this. There we go. Why is that giving me an error now? Not all code path. Oh yeah, still working on it. That's why. Okay, so basically, if we did find, so we can say that Actually, we can put this. We can say return. Not sure. Right. It'll just return nothing, right? I kind of like this better than returning null, even though null, because null will give you issues. There's ups and downs to everything. There's ups and downs. Return found data, return generate new entity, and what else? What else? So, so this is going to return the found data, which is going to basically be nothing. And then otherwise, if this doesn't have anything, no, I think this is bad. Pretty sure this is bad. Because what will happen is then it'll pump information into it that is blank. And it'll give me errors on the other side that'll say, hey, we can't find this particular key. That's what's going to happen. But if I put this, it's going to then say, it's going to populate it with old data. Right? Because the player might have done something between saves. And I don't want to put a save call over here before calling this. I mean, technically this should only ever be called when the scene starts, right? Or, yeah, basically it should only ever be called once in a scene for the particular entity. So if it's a player, the player should only ever have to get entity once. If it's an NPC, it's only once when the scene loads, and so on. We should never have to do a get entity from the data manager otherwise. So there should be a default of when you exited the last scene, you updated persistent entities with the information, which is what update entity is supposed to be handling. Right? Everything once you do, so there's a call that can be made that I haven't made yet that I'm going to put into the persistent, but it's basically the inverse of this, which is like func exit tree, right? Which is called when I'm going to put it here to remind myself later. But this is called when you exit a scene. This is called when you enter a scene, or when the scene starts and when the scene ends. So it's pretty useful. And again, this seems to happen. It's like in Unity, it would be awake, then enable or unenable, and then start. And then you have the regular stuff, and you have a whole bunch of other things like update, late update, fixed update, so on. And then when you're coming out, you have on disable and then on destroy, right? I mean, those are some of the stuff. I mean, there's tons of other ones, but basically that's like the order of how these calls are made. So it looks like as if enter tree is the first and exit tree is the last call of all of these types of calls that are made, which is good to know. All right, that's how it's functioning. That's what I'm going to assume it's doing until I have the wherewithal to actually do things the right way and go read the docs on it. So getting back to this, I want it to return null because if it's returning null, that means that it's going to give me an error and I can run null check on it at that point. So instead, I'm going to have to run, I guess, a size check on the dictionary before it starts trying to apply other things. So whatever the dictionary is that we get back, we just run a size check on it to ensure that it's got what we want. It's got stuff in it, basically. That's what I'm thinking. That might be the bet. So let's leave it as is. Okay, good to know. So the next thing is found data is equal to persistent entities, right? So if it active doesn't have it, then we say, okay, the found data is going to be equal to the persistent entities. Active entities is going to get that added to it now. So if we ever call this back, it's just going to return nothing. And we can just stop the process from there. We don't want to overwrite if the entity is already active in the scene. So then we do a break after this part. If we go to this part, it should just do a return from it. I don't know what's happening here. I'll be honest. Like, I'm so scared about what this is doing exactly. Let me see something. Will this warn me? No, it doesn't. See, I mean, like Unity, I mean, well, ID, the Microsoft, as much flack as I get, Visual Studio, it's actually would have warned me about that. So, um, okay, found data, return generate new entity, else. Okay, let's do a, so yeah, I think this part is done. I think we've got the logic here set up. And it's worse, so if we found the data, then we return found data. Yeah, the logic is done. Okay, yeah, now I feel more comfortable with this. When I read down and I saw this, it's kind of sending me for a loop on this part because I'm so used. Oh, you know what I can do? I'm such a dummy. Break. We can just do break here, right? And because we already initialized found data over here, we don't need to set it here, right? It's already blank over here. And once I call break here, I think it won't operate the rest of this. It'll actually just break out of the for. I think that's how it should. I mean, that's how it does it in Unity, but I mean, oh, but it's going to go here and then found data, and that's just going to return the blank. So I don't need to do the extra return there, that's what I was really getting hung up on because it just felt wrong to do it that way. So yeah, if we find any data, then we return the found data. So here, like here, we have to do a size check, right? Because dot size greater than 0. I want to do that, and I'm going to put a print here for later. Okay, just in case we do multiple. And then over here, we want to do a similar things after we get past the checks, right? This is kind of the difference. We don't want to break out because in this case, we actually want to iterate through all of it. And we want to basically say, hey, everything that's supposed to be in this scene, right? I want to know, and you're not the player. I want you to first check to see if you're already in the active entities. And if you are, then we're just going to continue to the next one. And if you're not, then we're going to say that you're part of the found data group. And we're going to add you. I don't think we need found data for this. I think we're just going to do this, which is just to add it to the active. And then we do a return. Oh no, we do need found data. Okay. I'm so then yeah, because this is only doing it once, right? It's not we're not iterating through everything. So basically the idea is the idea is that the active entities we want to just make sure that we get for every entity that this is so weird, this one, right? Because this is going to be called, you know what it is that this is a separate system that I haven't made yet, this part, and I'm not going to make it anytime soon, but I kind of want to flesh this out so that way I don't have to make it later, right? So the idea is we want to take this persistent data and we want to, it's only ever, or it should only ever fire off once, is the idea. Is it using data? Yes, it is using data current location. So what is data exactly? Data should be the persistent entity that's going to be calling this, right? And so in this case, the only thing that this needs from data is the current location. So what we can do is in the persistent entity manager, we would instantiate, we would need to know first, we need to handle the instantiation, right? So we need to know how many entities actually need to be instantiated into a scene. If there might be none, right? So the question is, if we have an entity manager, a persistent entity manager in the scene, that entity manager is going to say, hey, I need to know how many people or how many entities are in this particular scene. And it's going to go into the data manager to find that out. And it's going to say, hey, data manager, how many people do you have in the persistent entities that is in the current scene? All right. I think part of the problem here is that I wanted this to do too much. This needs to be split into two different, um, I think this needs to be split into two different functions. One is going to be for just getting the player specifically, and one is going to be for getting other persistent entities. That's what I think needs to happen. Because if I combine it this way, it's not so much that the player is doing something, it's just the nature of the player. There's only one player. Right? So if there's only one player, then doing a get entity call in this way is going to return. But the thing is, I'm returning a dictionary, right? So if I'm returning a dictionary, then the size of that dictionary. So let's say that it's the manager that's going to do this. The first thing the manager would want to do is the manager wants to instantiate an entity, a persistent entity that is not the player, an NPC entity, right? And then when it does that, that entity on its on ready needs to, and this is where it gets kind of convoluted, but it's going to communicate back to the manager and it's going to say, uh, or rather, it's going to communicate to this and it's going to say, hey, how many of me are there in this scene? NPCs. And what, and what exactly are we made of? And I don't like that system. Right? That's where this is leading, as far as I can tell. So by splitting it up, what I can do instead is just have the manager say, hey, how many, I need to know from the data manager, how many entities do I need to have in this scene altogether? And then this will make a new dictionary of all of the data that matches the criteria. And then it's going to pass that dictionary through to the persistent entity manager, which is then going to iterate through that dictionary and instantiate all of the persistent characters that need to be instantiated. I think that way is much, 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 much better. And the way to accomplish that is really um, split this up, right? But I'm still tempted to find out if I can do this in just a few more lines of code, which it just keeps looking like it's possible. It just keeps looking like it's possible. That continue call is super sexy for doing that. So let's see. Let's test it out first. Let's see if it's possible to do that within this same script, because then all it would come down to is, no, it's not. Yeah, it's just not, because I typecast this, right? Data. Maybe if I didn't typecast this, then it would be possible. But because this is always looking for a persistent entity, that's just not going to happen. So yeah, we have two options. We can simply delete this, right? And let me just see how many times data is called here. Because the reason why I did that is because of these for loops. You never know when you're going to really use them. And I don't need this thing making assumptions. So we kind of don't use data much, do we? Oh, here we go. Yeah, so it's inside of a for loop. So yeah. Hmm. So instead, what we'll do is we're going to call this a wash. We're going to say, we're going to change the name of that also. But let's take this out for now. And we're going to say, this at the end is going to be return found data. Okay, there we go. This can be found data is equal to, right? So if we somehow manage to get here, then we'll generate this. And then at the end, we'll just do a return found data. All else fails. Wait, why is this at the same level as that? There we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, good. So the way that this works is found data is going to be equal to the persistent entities active. Then and if this is the case, then we just break out of this for loop and then we go and say, so if we don't find anything here, if the data is the player, and we don't find anything in the persistent data, we check to see if the found data size is greater than 0. And if it's not, or if it is, then we just set this to found data, whatever it found in here, right? So this is assuming we found something. And then this part is going to say, if we manage to get here somehow, this part is going to say, so actually I think this code can be made a little bit cleaner. Yeah. So if not, then we can do continue. And then we can go out, 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 out. Okay, so now we're going one layer out of that. Okay, spacing. All right, so now this will go and say, well, for each entity, is this, if this is not the player, then just continue. And then if it is, then we want to check, is this already in the active? If it is, then we break. And then we say, hey, found data. If it's not in the active, then we say found data is equal to the persistent, and then we add it to the active, and then we break instead over here. And then we say, if the size of the found data is greater than 0, we're doing a check here, and we're returning the found data, which is handled elsewhere. So now the next part is func get NPCs. And we're going to put in, I don't think it needs anything, but it's going to return a dictionary. And then we're going to just paste. Oh, yep. Okay. All right. So but yeah. Sorry. So now what this is going to do is get persistent NPCs. So what this is going to do now is this is going to say for every entity, if the persistent entity's scene key is equal and they're not the player. Okay, so let's do it like this. Sure. There we go. Bring this out one level, out one level. Just a little bit easier on the eyes. Okay. So now, what's the issue? Scene key, right? Okay. So we need to get this. data is not declared. So we need data. In this case, what are we using data as? We're using data to get the current location. So we can use current, we can just use location string. Right, and then we can just pass that in. Okay, and found data. Okay, that should satisfy what's happening over here. Not all code paths. Yeah, fine. So now we say this continues. So if this is the situation, if this location, if the location doesn't match, right? So yeah, if the location doesn't match, sorry, if the location doesn't match, it'll continue. Or if the key, if this is the player, then we'll continue. So the reason why, if I mean, I'm assuming it's left to right. So the reason why I put this over here is because this is more likely than this, right? Or rather, this is more likely than this. So it's more likely going to be the case that this is going to permit a check going to the right. So, like, if you put persistent here, right, this is going to see, well, is this true? And most times it's going to be false. And because this is false, then it's going to read over to the right and say, hey, now is this true, right? So I would rather just get this call out of the way and never have to do a query into this. Even though this isn't, I don't think this is too bad, because it's still a dictionary, right? Um, it's still, it's still something that, you know, if you can avoid it, just avoid it. Uh, so, um, then we're going to say, well, does the active entity have that? And if it says yes, then we just continue also. These are two situations where we can continue in. Right? And already it feels better than looking at how it looked for here. Over here was kind of like a behemoth. This feels a little bit better. This was just getting too big. Get entity. I'll change it later to get a player. But basically, um, basically now what this we want two results from this, right? Or rather, we actually just need one result from this, which is we need it. Well, we needed to find that. So now, if it does get here, then it's going to set the persistent, it's going to set the found data. It's going to add it to the active, and then it's going to break out of this. And so now once it breaks out, then we're going to go here and we're going to say, uh, well, no. This is how it should be if we were dealing with individuals. We're not dealing with individuals. We're dealing with a dictionary, so we can return a bunch of individuals. Right? So the idea is that we don't need found data anymore, I think. All right. Yeah, let's leave found data. We can keep using it. But found data is going to change a little bit. Found data is going to be more like active data. So this is going to be I did something over here. Where is it? Save, load game. Yeah, so basically, it's complicated. It's getting a bit weird. But we can get rid of this. And the idea is that found data is not going to just be equal to that, right? Found data I. Hmm. Yeah, I just keep forgetting that it's not like an add command. So, yeah, basically, found data's I is going to be equal to this dictionary. So we're going to be I. No, something is very wrong here. I'm not liking that. Okay, I is the key for the persistent dictionary, right? So we're setting this key to being I. That's that. And then this is the dictionary inside of the dictionary. So, and this is adding it. As we keep going, we'll just keep adding to it. And so then we say at the end, return found data. I think that's good. Yeah, I think that's good. Let me check YouTube. Give me a sec. Okay, good to go. Um, okay, so I'm going to be wrong thing. I'm going to be working next on testing it. We want to find out. Well, I'm pretty sure this works, right? I'm actually a little bit safer or more campy about this than this. I mean, oh, that's what we're forgetting. Okay. So we need a way of creating new entities, right? Because all this is going to do, I think we can skip that because this isn't even implemented in the game. We have no system for negotiating the logic of entities. And I think the way I'm going to handle it is that at the very beginning of the game, uh, it's going to just create a lot of uh, NPCs, and I'll have a system that assigns weights to things like the strengths of each one of these NPCs, like what level they are and what location they're going to be at. And then that's all going to be added to the list. So there is no system that's going to be in place for that for a little bit. right? The priority right now is the player. So we just divorced this basically from this. So let's make a little note saying creating, oh, it's Unity. There we go. Creating new entities requires um, requires an creation logic, I guess. Yeah. NPC creation logic. Okay. So over here, let's just double check this, or triple or quadruple, however many times I've checked it so far. But yeah, so basically, first we ensure that we have, if we have the player or not, and then we also double check to ensure that active entities are here or not. And if it if if it does have something, then it's just going to return an empty found data. If it doesn't, then it's going to return the persistent data that matches that, right? So this is because this is assuming that it's possible that we don't have persistent data on the player. And we don't want to have to iterate like we're iterating here. That kind of moots the point of using a dictionary. So this is kind of like a faster way of handling this. If the player already has, we don't need to iterate through the dictionary um, in order to find the player. But in the case that we're getting something blank, then what we can do is we can say, uh, yeah. So in case we find something blank, then what we can do is now we say, okay, this is the key, this is the scene. I don't think we need the scene here anymore. This is the key for the player. And so now we're going to do a check. We say, hey, in the persistent, do you have something that's saying that it is the player? And if you don't, if what you're looking at isn't, then just continue. Otherwise, it's going to check next to see if whatever you found is active, right? Is the player already active? If the player is active, technically you shouldn't have reached here, right? Because that would mean that that would mean that the player should already have existed in the scene, and whatever you're making the call improperly. So probably I put in. Let's change the name of this also. Get player. Right. Okay. So it, yeah, sure. Um, where number 19? Where's number 19? Update entity. Yeah, see some things are gonna. Yeah, some things are gonna be problematic. And Okay, there we go. Oops. A little bit messier, but I mean, at least it's obvious what it's doing. Um, okay. So now we have this is the minutia. A lot less exciting, I think, right? Um, yeah, it's a lot less exciting than doing like 3D work, but 3D work has its moments also. You have to figure out logic. Uh, let's see. Player key enums entity property is player data dot is player for I. Yeah, so I think this is gonna be good for setting up the player proper. As long as we get that this is the player, it's handling it properly. Um, we do have a small issue though, where how we handle this, right? It wants to return, so update entity. Hmm, it's problematic. Maybe we can make a bool. No, actually, I think I have a better idea. I think I have a better idea. What are we looking at here? We're looking at data, right? So what if we just get rid of this? And we put here, oh, no, we can't do that. Okay, hold on. Okay, so hmm, hmm. What we can do is we can add here data dot, no, data and full colon. We can do persistent entity that way. And we can say it's equal to null, right? And then we can have check over here. Oops. So the idea here is that we want to get a specific NPC, right? We want to update a specific NPC. So here now we can just pass data itself proper. And in this case, we have that, well, we don't know what NPCs we're dealing with. And so we're just trying to get a bunch of NPCs. So in kind of, there's a kind of modularity to this now, right? So now over here, let's put together that modularity and we'll say if the data is not null, then instead what we want to do is we want to get we want to check if ac- uh, uh, hmm. We want to say found data is equal to the well, actually we can just copy this. Right? That's it. So effectively, if I make an entry for the data here, instead of all of this happening, it'll just do this, where it finds a specific entity, right? And it's going to say, wait a second, what is this doing exactly? This is, okay, so this is writing to the dictionary. It's going to update the dictionary that way. So it's updating the dictionary, updating the entity in the dictionary. So it's a specific entity. It is a specific entity. And it's updating that specific entity in the dictionary. Right? So it's going to push back out that the persistent entity has this ID, which it should, because if we're pushing this in, then we're dealing with the ID proper. So data.persist. So first we check to see if it's null, not null. Then we check the ID, which I think this could probably be a string. I'll be honest with you. I think this could get away with being a string. But regardless, yeah, I think I want to make this a string. Okay, good. So now this is just going to check that string. And this can be equal to nothing. Right? And so now when we go up to here, say this is just going to take in the data dot. So this should only ever get called in this fashion if the data persistent ID is not a value that is. Otherwise, we can just call it via the location, and that'll be good enough. And that will give us all of this. Okay, fair enough. So now, I don't know why I'm still in this section. Oh yeah, because I keep bumping into the little things. Um, okay, so now this should be working as it was working, or as it's intended to work. It should be. Won't find out until we test it. The next part is this. We're back to the player again. So yeah, basically this is going to be returning one value, and that one value gets passed, right? And this should only ever happen if we don't know the persistent ID. So now where you see, like in the other IDE, you can actually just see like where this is being called. It would have been nice to get that here, but whatever. Yeah, you see, they don't tell you. I have to look for it. So actually, I could just do a search. Update entity. There you go. So in generate new entity, update entity is called. That's what's, and we pass in the data there, right? So we have no call in this. In this, there's a generate new entity, which passes in this data, and then that data uh, is then updated with the new persistent ID, and then we call update entity, which then just writes whatever information is on that object into the the dictionary, right? And so by doing that, what happens is we have the information stored in the dictionary for when we go to save the game. And it'll just take it from the dictionary. And then when we load the game, it'll take it from JSON and add it back to the dictionary. And then when we play the game after loading it, then it's going to be, in the player's case, we do get player, and then we pass in the persistent entity from the player. We check to see if it has an ID. It's going to say it doesn't. So instead, we're going to iterate through the dictionary to find if we have anything that says that it's the player. And if it does, then we'll say we found that data, and then we add that player to the active entities. And then we return the found data if the found data size is greater than 0, right? That's the idea. That's the idea. Otherwise, it'll return. I don't think we need this. Yeah, pretty sure we don't need it. Because what, what the problem So what the problem was that we don't need that anymore at all because the found data um, that we're getting is already initialized over here. So this found data is just blank, right? Unless it's been populated here. Um, but now we have this issue. Huh. Yeah, hold on. I see some problems here. So this we can do like this then, because we don't need that. So we can go if we technically, I don't think we even need this, because this is only dealing with the player now. Yeah, I mean, my head is making it way more complicated. I don't think we need this though, because this is only dealing with the player. So now we have one less layer. Okay, so basically, this needs to be an if, right? So this is if this can actually exist over here. It doesn't need to exist because we have more than enough clauses. So if found size is less than 1, right? So in other words, we didn't find anything. That's the, you know what? I have a really good question. Hold on. Print found data. Actually, I have to do it this way. If found data, print found went off. Okay, that'll clarify that question for me because I don't know if this is still going to. This is an empty dictionary, but I don't know what this is going to say. If this goes off, then that means. Oh, let's do it this way. Else, it doesn't make a difference. Else. Okay, there we go. Next is to figure out. Um, this is just really a test for me to figure out how GDScript is handling dictionaries with regards to just empty checks. Um, Okay, this should work. I mean, there's no reason why this won't work. We just need to go back to the persistent entity script. And instead of get entity, we're going to do get player. You don't have to worry about NPCs quite yet. So we can get away with passing this in. Um, let's do this, Funk. Populate. Properties. And we're from here, we're just going to pass in data. This is a dictionary. This is going to take in data, so it can do this. There we go. Man, this can be gotten rid of. Right. Okay. What is test? Test is that, right? So, let's do this, because this should want to know, I think. It wants to have a reference. So data manager is going to be equal to data persistent data manager. Which is going to be equal to, equal to that, and at, I think that's how you do it. What's the issue? Unexpected identifier in class body. Is it this? Hmm. Okay, what about that? Oh, okay, that should do it. And then we can get rid of test here, and we can replace it with data manager. Okay. So there we go. And this is a nifty way now that we know of how to get the current file path, or how to get the file path of the scene we're currently in. Just pretty cool. We just get the tree first, blah, 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 blah. Scene and then file path. Okay, so yeah, I think that's a decent setup, right? This is temporary right here. This should not be here, to be honest with you. Why is data, var data being set? What? What is this doing? I don't know what it's doing here. Data manager that get player is equal to. Oh, I see. This is the dictionary. So dict, put that right, and then from here we would want to call this, but we're actually not going to do that here. Instead, we're going to go down to the. We're going to go down a level. Into the player no, the player, where is it? Dungeon player. Then on ready. And we're going to call the initialize, yes, but we're actually going to be doing this here. All right. And we have to save, I think, is what it needs. And then from this, then we're going to say, I think it was called populate. Yep, there we go. Populate properties, and we're just going to pass in the dictionary. All right. And that'll be it. So this actually has visually, it just is better for me right now. Because I can see this is only happening in this is only going to be a player class thing, right? And actually, I'm just going to get rid of this altogether and just call it the player. Because I don't think it's used anywhere else anyway for right now. Identifier data manager not declared in current scope. Why not? Is that like an old thing? It should give me an error, right? Oh no, the game is actually working. Well, I'll be damned. I had no idea the game is actually working. All right, so player is working now. Um, okay, I expected a ton of errors. I was just testing that because I wanted an error to find out what was going on there. Okay, you didn't see that, but the game screen just actually popped up when I hit play. I think you didn't see it. I have to let me see if Godot if OBX. I don't think nope, it doesn't show it. I'd have to go share the screen altogether. I'll do in a second. When I'm ready to test is when I'll do that. Okay. So yeah, basically we'll go. So now that we know that I don't think we should ever be overriding this. So I'm going to just leave it like that. Um, initialize the persistent data, right? So first we do a couple of things. First I set the entity's name. And then we run an initialize persistent data. And then in initialize persistent data, oh yeah, we also set the is player to true since this is player. And then we do the initialize persistent data. So this is the order that things happen here, right? First, the data manager is going to send the signal out. That's down here, right? I'm going to fix these in a second, but for now, I'm leaving them right here because I was just testing stuff out. But basically, it sends this signal out once it actually enters. It's ready, and after it enters the scene. And then if there is a player manager in that scene, it's already connected because it starts once the scene opens up to begin with. And it's going to connect to the data manager, which is a preload. um, so it loads before the scene, I guess. I don't know how that's preload is preload, whatever. Then it's going to fire off set player, and then set player runs an instantiation over here, right? And we set the position of it and blah, blah, blah. And we add it to child player, this node, right? Because this exists on this. So it's when we add child, it's just going to be a child of that. The next thing is it's going to be that yeah, and we also have a reference to it here. So if we ever need to get the players proper, we can just go to the player manager and get a reference to the player node. So that's pretty nifty. But anyway, once it's instantiated, then we go over here and we say, okay, the instantiation is done. What happened to the what happens to the entity? Create that entity for me. All right. And so, I mean, I can remove this for now, right? This is something that's going to be set up during gameplay, like you'll be able to name your character. I'm going to leave this actually, just so I just did this so I could see the JSON changes. But yeah, the important thing is I set this player to true. And then we initialize the persistent data. So now initialize persistent data and then after we initialize it, we go back to the data manager, which we get through an um, through onReady. Actually, maybe, hold on. Maybe, no, maybe this is actually better. I'm going to do this. Maybe no. Initialize, there we go. This is actually, there's a potential that this could be called before onReady. I don't know how this thing handles that. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So at least we know when we're calling it in order. So basically, this is going to say, hey, data manager, get this node. And it's going to go back to the root, which we can't see unless we play. Like if I think, is it going to error now? No, okay. So if you see here, you can go click remote on Godot and it'll show you all the stuff you don't get to see. This is the rest of the scene. When I come out of play mode though, it hides it. I don't know why they hide it. Maybe it's because I think I get what's happening there. I think I get what's happening there. I understand it a little bit. Or I have a hint about what they're doing. Okay. So then after that, the player then is going to fire off the initialize, which gets the data manager, sets for the current scene that the player is in, right? And it sets the current location of the player. Now this current location doesn't matter. The reason why I put it in persistent entities because it matters to the persistent entities overall, but to the player it doesn't really matter much because the player is the player, and as you saw, we spent about an hour tightening up the get player script, right? Which it's when we're going to do the NPCs that this is. Properties is then going to be called after this is done, right? And we're going to populate it specifically with the player. We don't want to populate it from this. We want to actually populate it from the player, the dungeon player, and we're going to do get player, and we're going to pass itself in there, which should be fine, right? And then it's going to populate its properties based on that. Actually, let me test this out because it's running populate properties, so I want to find out. So populate properties should also run update, I believe. Um, well, hold on. Populate properties is getting its values, right? It's going to reset the value. So I want to see if it's actually resetting it correctly or not. Yes, it is. Okay. Character is moving around proper. It feels good. Okay. I'll be right back, taking a short recess. Okay. Back. See. Um, okay. So the idea here is after this handles populate properties, let's go into populate properties and see what's going on. Okay. Yeah, so this is just going to handle informing this of its properties. So it's the get player part, right? That we wanted to actually check. So this get player is going to go here and it's going to say, hey, this is the stuff that I was just working on. So it's going to say, hey, did you find anything? It's going to say no, because this is a brand new player. Instead, we're just going to go here to else, and then we're going to say, we want to find if this thing exists in entities and has this. And apparently, and if it doesn't, then we're going to just generate new entity, right? That's what it's going to do. So, so what happens if the player has default stats? Well, generate new entity is taking care of that. So what is generate new entity doing? Right, and then it runs update entity. Right. That's why it's working. Aha! Awesome. So then we don't have an ID yet. So instead what we did is we ran this, which does like an update on it. Right? So we say the new ID is going to be equal to generate ID, which is then going to say, hey, you're going to add that entity. Wow, I haven't seen that script. It feels like in forever. But basically, it's going to say, uh, it's going to say new data is going to be equal to dictionary that ID, and it's going to say this new data, right? Mm-hmm. That's the idea. Sec. I see what's happening here. Right, so this is update. So instead of doing this, we're making a new dictionary and then adding that dictionary. My mind is blown. I don't know how I put this together. Ah, boy, but I did. So, but I get what it's doing. It's just that, like, what made me think of doing it this way? And it's really just uh my dealing with good GD script. It's just like I can't. But yeah, basically this is passing in persistent entities ID, which is that, and then it's going to say entity property. So it's really only passing in the ID, right? And I don't think we need to do this because it's doing that here also, right? And we're calling this also. So let's just follow the process. Let's go back to that and follow the process. So if there's absolutely nothing, this is a completely new character. We'll end up here is the idea. And when we end up here, generate new entity, we're going to say, okay, let's generate an ID for this guy, which it does. Then it's going to do add entity. This is the part that threw me off, right? We don't need to add, I think, because update is going to add, I think. No, update is not going to add. Instead, what happens here is we add the entity, and then we run a check on if data. All right, so if the data is not null, then we say data persistent ID is equal to new ID. So we've changed the original data now. And then we say we want to update data. So now when we update data, we go over here and we say if the data does not have an ID, then that's what was confusing me. Yeah, okay, we got you. I get it now. Okay, it's just the layer that I added here. It threw me off a little. But so basically this part is going to say, well, if you don't have an ID, you shouldn't be here. So go back to get player, right? And get player is going to say, okay, let me check to see if you're in the list. If you're not in the list, then we need to generate a new ID and then generate ID. So it's circular up to the point where it finally gets here and it says we're going to change this, right? And then it runs update entity using the data. Let's move this over here. And it then returns the persistent entity of this new data type, new data ID key. And then, so basically this part then becomes moot, right? We just skip it altogether. And then we go over here and we update the dictionary, basically, to have that particular ID. And once we do ID and all this other stuff. So this is working perfectly fine because when I went back into the game, I could move around. So it's actually storing the speed and deceleration and all this other good stuff that I can just test and see right away. Um, and then we come out of this with if this is the player, then we've updated the player ID, which I don't think we need anymore. All right, I don't think we need this because we kind of have this. So we can actually get rid of player ID. I was going to do something with player ID before, but I don't think we need it anymore. So I'm going to just get rid of this. And plus we have the player manager that we have access to over there. So we have two ways of getting to player information that's related to its ID. Um, player, uh, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what happened here? Found went silent. Okay, so that test that's down here, that test shows that this is uh, this is false, right? Because it's got nothing in it, which is perfect. So I can just get rid of this then. Okay, beautiful. Okay, it's saved and test was called. Let's go down to save. So that means that something was calling save. I believe it's this, right? And test was called is right here also. So that's interesting. Oh, I see. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, so basically we ran a saved game, right? And we technically did a load, but but we loaded from the instance data, right? Which is fine. That's what we were supposed to do. What we actually want to test is something else. Actually, let me share the whole, just the screen in general. right? And we're going to go back to Godot, and I'm going to open up just so you can see what the JSON file looks like again. Open a file manager. And save, this is it, save game.bin, notepad plus. Right, so this is it. So now I had encountered a bug before where it was just constantly duplicating this, right? The idea is, and you can see it's working, like art is here, the scene that it's supposed to be in is here. The fact that it is the player is true here. Uh, most of this would be nonsense to anyone who doesn't understand what's happening here, but as this gets filled out, I'm pretty sure some ambitious player will take a look at this and say, hey, I want to change my hit point maximum or something like that and change it here. It can do that. Um, so yeah, this is basically a unique ID. We have a unique number that's attached to it, right? And then we have, I'm happy about this. I really am. This is fine for me. Because now we're not getting duplicates. That whole system was made in order to prevent duplication of this. But I'm happy about this because this is a great framework for having, like, I can just picture this being entirely populated of these values. And it's just all of the different NPCs with their values and so on. You know, that'd be, I can't wait to get the game to that point. But we have a save load system, which I'm happy with. It it's a little mind bending for me at least, but at least we got it done, right? Um okay, so the first half of it is fine. The player side is done. Uh we kind of got tied up on that, but the game is working. I think I can just show it to you now. Oh, well, would you look at that? What happened? Index base out of bounds index 0 error. Where are we? There we go. Okay, good. What just happened? Out of bound index 0. Um, so the data that we got back. Oh, right. So this would come back. Let's go and take a look at this. This is remember what I was saying before that that was one of the worries that I had, right? Which was what happens if the data comes back with nothing in it. So let's look at the persistent data, and it's in the get player, and it's at this point, right, with this. So this answers a question: what happens with active entities and stuff? So effectively, what I need to do is this: exit tree, active entities dot clear. That should take care of it. Now let's see. Weird. Weird. All right, let's do a quick check real quick on if that's being called. Like, I think if I close the game and then start the game, it should work. No. So weird. Why is it doing that? Um. Okay. First, let's do a data dot. Actually, can I just do this? Yeah. See, this is one of the cool things about Godot GD script or this compiler. So I can just hover over this and see that it's empty. Pretty cool, right? It's showing me the contents of the dictionary. Now, if the dictionary goes crazy, then obviously you can't really track it. It's kind of pointless, but it's still nice that it's you can kind of just hover over the dictionary to find out what the heck is going on in it. So we can go over to the data manager actually and find the active. Does it show it? Nope. 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 Okay. If I take a look at the persistent entities, it's going to show it. No. Active? No. Hmm. Weird. Weird. Uh, okay, so persistent entities dot has data dot persistent and end. So first we want to find out what part of this script is going off with found data. I think it's here. It should be here. This is the only part of the script, I believe, that can possibly return uh, nothing. So let's do a quick check. Print. Found nothing. Oops. Found no match. Okay, and then we go back real quick to the persistent persistent. Yeah, I'm getting tired of this word persistent. The persistent character, and we're gonna just do a quick if data. If not data, then return. All right. We're gonna do that. That should allow us to just proceed through. And let's go. Nothing. Interesting. Hmm. Hmm. This is confusing. This is very, very, very confusing. Let's take another look at this one more time. Let's take a look at what's going on in here. Yep, the data is there. So this could be, simply put, where is it? Yeah, okay. So this could simply be that we should just go to Player Manager. And then we're going to go after we do set player, then we want to call no, actually it needs to happen before this. So once we enter this and we get the data manager, we connect, then we do data manager dot load. Actually, we should do this before. Load game. Okay, so this will happen once the player manager enters the scene. It's going to run a load game, right? And that, does that make sense? Get player is supposed to be, so no, this doesn't make sense. When the player actually chooses to load the game, that's when it should load the game. So we're gonna actually just put this over here, and we're gonna go to here. Where is it? So on enter tree, we're gonna go and do this. There we go. So we're just going to call load game as soon as we enter. This is temporary. Later on, when the player actually clicks load game or some load, whatever the prompt is, then they'll do the load. But for the purposes of this, uh, yeah, it's just there to load from file effectively. So let's put that together and let's see what happens. Okay, there we go. And now we can move. I added in a rotation script also. You're noticing that the character. Um, it's just an extension of the movement ability, right? Left. Okay. So yeah, I think. I mean, obviously that worked, right? Loading worked perfectly fine. Saving seems to be working perfectly fine. So that's it. That is all. And we put that check on making sure that we're not populating the data incorrectly. It did call save after this, so now let's double check to see if it's doing things. Well, it didn't go here, so let's remove this. I don't know where it went to get that null information. I need to really um like this is the only place that it should have done that. Right? Just sent in an empty thing. This, but then, oh no, no, no. I realize what's happening. I'm so weird. Effectively, it was actually doing exactly what I feared it would do, which is that as you go between scenes, the preloaded data, this is not actually a singleton. The preloaded data is going back to this. So now it could have been because I did this at the very beginning. And if that's the case, then I'm actually kind of happy about this because that means I have some control. So maybe if I get rid of this, then it'll behave differently. But the idea is that uh, we don't we should just be able to do get player and get the player's information. And I guess later today or tomorrow I'll experiment and find out how to do a singleton version of this. Um, because Godot doesn't have static properties. So it is what it is. Uh, where am I? So this works. We have no idea if this works. It should work. Um, this works, which is awesome. All right, that's a nice little trick. Uh, 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 this code looks pretty good. Not too deep. Before it was going layers and layers, but the beauty of continuous. Next is save load seems to be working. These are just straight up what they're supposed to be doing, and they're doing it well. So that's good. On scene loaded. I don't think we need this. This was a something to test. We're just gonna put this here. We're just gonna do this. I don't think we need this at all. All right, because really all we need to do is just load. We need to figure out this basically we need to figure out when we get to this scene we just need to call uh, we just need to call get persistent NPCs, right? And we've determined that the way that we're going to do that is through the manager, the NPC, or the persistent entity manager. So we don't need this at all. And we don't really need to worry about that stuff. Let's move this and this to the top. Okay, there we go. Now this, so this was just really something to test out, like what was going on with this. So we don't need this stuff anymore. All right, and this is still, I'm gonna just keep this here. Uh, but I mean, yeah, let's do this. So basically, whenever we change a scene, it's going to save the game, and whenever we enter the scene, we're going to load game. That's the idea. And that's why I was like, wow, these things are pretty nifty. Um, so what these two things need actually is some kind of modularity, but I haven't built out the entire interface for the save system, obviously, because, well, for reasons we don't. Basically, what would happen is, um, I won't if I want to have like an autosave, I would just adjust the save path, right? So I would just have different save paths. Let's move this up also. All right, so I would have different save paths. So in this case, this is just a test save path. So this is fine, but we would just have like a save path catcher, which effectively, when the player clicks, let's say we have autosave, that path, and we have the save slot 1, 2, and so on and so forth. That would effectively just be the different um, save paths that you could pick, right? And then when you go to load, you click that particular icon, and it would just adjust to that specific save path. That's all. So, and you could even like name your own save paths. It'd be pretty cool. But we're not there. We're not there. So there's no reason to do that. This system had to be built, I think, early, to some degree, and I made it more verbose than it needed to be. That's for certain. But I did that because I'd rather headaches now than headaches later when like my brain is all buzzed out from whatever other nonsense I'm going to be having to do. But yeah, basically this is done. So let's I'm going to put this on shelf for now. We're not going to create. Well, no, we did it. This is it. Persistent characters, instance enemy. And the instance character stats. Okay, so we're actually going to add one more to this, which is weapon sprite and attack uh, ability combo. Okay, so we're going to shift this over to the top of my list. I think these need to be handled before we start going into enemies, these two. All right, I think they need to be handled. So let's actually put this stuff back over here. I don't want to handle that. I want to take care of these two right now. Okay, so do we want to go and make a weapon? I've never made a weapon before, I'll be honest. Um, and I think I want to try to make one. Let's go to A Sprite. All right, and I think we're gonna make a chakram. That's what I think we're gonna do. Why does it keep trying to recover files? I told it to do not recover anymore. I'm tired. What is this? Oh, we already. I thought we saved this. Sure. Okay. Yeah, we don't need to save those. Delete. 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 Okay, good. Um, hmm. Next, we need to make a new 32. 32. Yeah, transparent background. Okay. So let's hmm. So I have a couple of ways of thinking about this, right? The weapon being the chakram, it's going to get its own scene. I'm going to treat weapons the same way that I treated the abilities, which is that they're their own scenes, and you kind of uh, have in the, I guess, in the player, your active weapon, right? And in the player, you can say that this active weapon is the one that is set up and being shown. Now, there's no inventory yet, but the idea is that the player right now is only going to have a weapon, that one weapon. I could probably just make a list, but I don't want to do all of that quite yet. Maybe tomorrow. Seeing as how that I am straying away from or getting, once I finish enemies, then I'll make an inventory system. I'll do that. So let's start with making a circle. This is supposed to be a chakram. Chakrams are circles. Uh, and I think, do I want it to have an animation, actually? Hmm. I think we do. I think we actually do want it to have an animation. My understanding is that, like, effects and so on are separate animations. They're not. So I think so the programmer in me is saying we can just use some coding tricks to give it an animation. It's not really tricks, it's more like just things that you can do when you code. The other side, the solo developer side says, why not take the time to experiment with animating it, right? And I think actually I like the programmer side on this because it's really just a hybrid. It's a combination, which is exactly what I'm aiming for as a solo developer. It's the idea is we are supposed to leverage all of our abilities. So, what does this look like? Okay, so it is. I can say that much. So let's do it like this. One. So we have one, two. Actually, let's do a straight line. All right, that should help me out a lot. So actually, let's do this. Make my life a little bit easier. I haven't done this in a while actually, so not sure. We can just add new layer. There we go. Okay, boom. So now on that new layer, yes, make it visible. Is it not visible? Why is it? Yeah, it is visible. Okay. So on this new layer, now we can do this without messing up the previous layer. And that's a good way of measuring out things. And then we can just go here, and I kind of want it to be like around here. That might, yeah, that's too small. Still too small. Okay, that's about right. I want to give myself like 2 pixels. What the heck? There we go. What the heck? Why is it doing that? It's supposed to. It's shifting the like it's not. It's so weird. All right, what happens if I start where this started? Huh, that's so useless. Okay, let's go over here. I see. Okay. Okay, I get it. So if we started here and then go down to here. There we go. Right? That would be it. And then over here now, hmm. Okay, no. So yeah, basically the rest of this is just going to be coloring. So I can get rid of that. And yeah, so the rest of this is really just about coloring it out. So I think on the outsides, I want it to be white. All right, and then actually let me show this. And then on the inside, I want it to be a slightly silver color. So you can go here. Is that really silver? Maybe. Let's get a reference of a chakram real quick. I like this one. It's not the classic it's not the classic full circle, but it's nice. Pretty sure if you ran it by someone, they'd say this is a horrible weapon, though. Probably hook on everything. And then you'd have the person arguing why you can dual wield them. Or that they should disassemble. Or it's a historically viable weapon. Um, let's see. Yeah, I mean, it probably is. But I just like the idea that it has that grip. So let's um copy this image into this. Let's take this, put this over here, go right this, and take a second to consider if this is what we want, if we want it like that. So there's a couple of things, right? First off, we have to pick a side that the weapons are going to call their forward when I do the art on them. And I think I'm going to have everything face right on default. So the swords are going to be facing right. Everything's going to just be facing right. So when I do any kind of flip programmatically, um, it's something that will show easily that way. It's something that can be worked with easily that way. So the real question is, I want these spikes and I want this inner ring, right? But I only have 32 by 32 to do this. So the solution is use my 32 by 32 to the best of my ability. Okay. And I think one more should be enough. Oops. Forgot that's not how that works. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, boom. So now we have this area. This area is going to have to be uh, the area for like the spikes, right? So now this weapon is gripped from over here. And then the spikes are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So one spike that way, spike that way, so on. So 1, 1, 2. Let's just go over here. And let's mark them off. We can already see some problems over there. So now the trick with sprite art is, from what I've discovered, two things. One is you need to find, let's draw these in, color these in first. You need to find hold on one sec. There we go. you need to find the consistency point, right? Like, what is the consistent pattern? And you need to find the number behind that pattern. So what this means is that there is a pattern here. And in order to achieve that pattern, we have to give up something out here. So I'm thinking, let me show this again so I can get an idea. I'm thinking that this changes to red at its maximum on this side is 1, 2, there's a total of 4. And then over here, is a total of 4, right? And then right here is 1, 2, 3. So we have a total of 3 on the sides. 4. That's weird. How come it looks weird? So that's what let me just make sure that that's not translating. What the heck? Did I just draw that on the... Yes, I did. Yes, I did. That's why it looks weird. I'm like, what the heck just happened? So, anyway. Oh, that's why it's like that. Got it. Haha. Okay, no. There we go. So it's 4, 4, 3. And then we have those little areas like that. I need to take a look. 1, 2. So this is 2. And what about over here? Do we have 1, 2? Yeah, we have areas of just 2, and we have areas of 4. So it's 4 at maximum. So it's 2 to 4. I don't like that. So I'm still new to this stuff. So my thing is that I want this to be as simple as possible. Now, the good news is that it comes down to math. So once I nail the math on this once, it should be fairly simple, right? And I think what it is we need to hit this area first. So let's hit this area, and we're going to hit that, yeah. Oops. Okay, so this is going to be where it can be or should be grabbed, essentially. Right? We've made it twice as large. Let's just make sure it's analogous. Yeah, we messed up a little bit. There we go. This is 2 up. This is... I think that's it. So now, this also has those spikes coming in. So now, the next thing is the spikes going out, right? We can say that, well, actually, let's just color in this part first. And say that this is where it gets darker. Money. Oh, right. Can actually get away, I think, with a little bit of flourish on this, maybe. Something like that. Right? And then hmm, that's pretty cool, I think. Yeah. So it's just symmetry for the most part at that point. And then we can have, we'll just put in like a darker white over here kind of situation. Oops. Right. And there we go. I think that's good enough. Um, right. So now, so now that's the grip. And then the next part would be the actual uh, spike. So the spike kind of in this way just comes out like it's kind of curving already into the spike, right? From the moment that you move from the handle. And in this way there's a lot of room between the spike uh, alteration to the blade or the chakram, the wheel. So in this way we can actually get away with kind of just building it out like that, but it's built in a weird kind of almost C. Like it looks like a situation of this looks like 2 2 and then it goes 1 1 1 1 and then like that. That's what it looks like. So let's just do some one. So this is 2. So let's say that this is the beginning of it. So we can get let's say this is 3, right? And then so this is the handle 1 2 3. Now let's make it 2 1 2, and then we can go white for this. I feel like 3 would have been better, and then 2. Grr. Well, let's just build it out and see what we get. Because part of this thing is that it's a spike going kind of in this direction. So I think 2 would have been better. And then we can go like that. And then we can go, oops, like this. And like that. Hmm. So 2 is not that great. 3. I mean, let's get rid of this for a sec. Throwing my eyes. So let's get rid of these. See what it does. Yeah. Okay. So let's do that. See what it does. Start that earlier. I don't like it. I'll be honest. I do not like this. I want to do it a different way. I'm going to create a rule for myself. This space right here is, what is this? This space right here for me is 1, 2, 3 maximum. So this space right here is 2 maximum, right? Because this is roughly, so this is technically supposed to be 3 at maximum. So at this point right here, you would have covered as much distance from right here to right here. Uh, and so to deal with this, we're going to do this a little bit of cheating. Okay, done. Next is we go here. And from here, now we just have to fill in the white. Right? And there we have that. And now we just need to erase. Nope. Grr. 32 pixels is sometimes feels like it's not enough, but it is. It's just that I'm a complete noob at this stuff. What's throwing my eyes off? I think it's because this is too high, right? I think this is too low. I see. Okay. That helped. Oops. Okay. So if I remember how to handle this, there's more of an issue of let's make this entire thing white first. Okay, my eyes can handle this nonsense I'm about to pull. Okay. We'll call that where it ends. One, one, two, one, two. Oops. Okay, so this is 2, so this needs to be 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And then this is where that comes to an end. Instead of doing it that way, you can do it this way. I dislike this. If this was 64 by 64, it would have been freaking easy. But you only get so much. Well, I shouldn't say easy. I should say it would have given me more room to. I think that's actually close enough to what's needed. I don't like that big flat side though. So what I can try is, let's see if I do this. It's going to throw off the perspective, but I think that's better. I think we have a winner. Let's go here. We're going to go here. We're going to grab that. All right. And then we're just going to go copy, paste over here, rotate. Oh, yes, the rotation. If you can use it and get away with it, then use it. If not, then just cry yourself to sleep as you have to do the same freaking art again. um, yeah, basically this needs to be re-added. Grr, I wish I could freaking, let me try it one more time. Hmm. Yeah, no, we're gonna have to do it over and over again. All right, let's do. There's one of them that we should be able to copy directly though, so let's do it this way. Oops. Nope. That's not it. I think this is it. There we go. I wonder. Let me see something. We're going to use that as a kind of way of measuring. Oops. There we go. That's weird. That's very weird. Um, there we go. That's better. All right, cool beans. No, just was just testing that out to see what would happen. Yep, that's it. Okay, so now we just need to go and do some erasing. So it's two to the right, two down. I think that's it. Nope. Oh, there we go. That's it. Okay, the other one that we need to do is the one over here. Yep, there we go. Um, one sec. Probably this should probably make things visually easier. Oops. Uh, off that. There we go. I think it was better the way that it was before. You could see what I was doing it based on. I think after I'm done with this, I'm going to take a break. All right. So with this side done, it's easier now to handle this side and this side by hand. right? Because I can just look at this now and I can say, well, I can look at this and say, well, this is actually how this was supposed to be handled. Right? So, yeah, I think that's good. I think maybe we can afford to go a little bit further down. No, because the curve gets more as you go further. So it's actually smoother going this way than goes. Yeah. All right. So yeah, basically it becomes a lot easier now because all I need to do is I can count 1, 2. So it's 1, 2. And then at the bottom, oops, 1 is the corner, 2, which is over here. So 3 is going to continue out for 1, 2, well, 1, oops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we go over here, 1, 2, and then we go. Wait, is that 2 or 3? Yes, 2. So we go 5, 2, then we go down. Wait, what? 5, down 1, 2, down 1. Did I do that right? I don't think I did that right. We had 5, 2, 1, 5, 2, 1. And then from that 1, we went down. 2, 1, 2. There you go. And then from there, we are just going to fill in, right? And this has a connection like that. Okay. Now the next part is to do the erasing. So the erasing is a pattern of 2s. So 1, 2, 1, 2. Here. How many times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have too many. There you go. Right. And how many over here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 is the magic number for that. Right? And so now we can just do what we did over on the other side. Right here. Go, and actually I want to get everything like what I got before on the other side. With that is that's a good way of measuring it. And we're just going to go like this. And then we're going to go like this. And then we're just going to go like that. Okay. So now obviously we have an issue, right? So we're going to just delete. Side is different. Actually, we have a pretty good reference. Right? This guy, we can afford to make this side a bit more different because we have this happening over here already. Okay, good enough. What am I doing? I should be doing a freaking prototype, not... Oh, whatever. I'm having fun, so why not? Um, all right. So then the next thing is these little triangles, right? This thing doesn't let you make triangles, I think. We kind of just have to wing it, I guess. So yeah, they're inside here. So we can just go like this. No, that's wrong. Oops. Let's get rid of that. Okay, boom. So what was wrong about that? Quite a few things, but yeah, this isn't actually the inner circle anymore. All right, kind of took that space away a little bit, which actually afforded us to be able to do something silly I didn't consider before. Cool whip. Uh, right. So yeah, we can afford to do something like this now, where now, now, now the easiest way to handle this would be to just do something like this, right? And then we just go back to here, and we get all of the areas. Yeah, so let's delete, well, not delete, but erase some stuff that we don't, nope, we don't need here. Layer 2. Yeah, I know that there's a fifth one. I'm going to try to add it in a second. Yeah, okay. So now the fifth one should be over here. Now, in order to add the fifth one, what I'm thinking is something that I wanted to do, which was to downsize this a bit. Before I downsize it, I want to create some patterns. Should I create the patterns before downsizing, or should I? Let's downsize it first and then create the patterns. All right, so let's go back one layer. So now we're going to go and let's hide that. So we're going to start over here. The idea is pretty simple. You get this and just move it in. Same thing here. A pretty simple idea. Got this. Just move it in. All around, the idea is, you got that. I'm going to move it in one. Okay. Same thing here. Oops. All right. We got that and we moved it in. Now, there's a reason I'm doing this. It's because I don't want this weapon to be exactly the same size as the player. That's one. And two, oh, this, move it in. And two, I think I messed that one up. Okay, there, let's start with this. So we're going to start with the side first. We're just going to grab everything here. And move it down one. Wait, no, we can't do that. There we go. Nope. All right, let's start from over here. Down. There we go. Move it down. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a seventh one missing. Is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, yeah, something is wrong. What the heck? Okay, let's figure this out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay, so it's to deal with this. There we go. All right, so this is now bad. Yeah, this is not good. I don't know what's going on here. Okay. I don't want to have to do that again, please. So let's just call this. This needs to go down. Okay. And then we need to go back in and we need to one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This should be white. There should be. There probably is. But it would have probably messed up the pixels badly if I did it that way. We could try it that way another time. For now, we've gotten enough work done here to keep going, I guess. So let's skip this side right now for reasons. And we're gonna go and shorten down this side a bit. Let's see. That's one, two. That's one, two, three. One, two, three, four. And this is at the peak. So this is one, two, three, four. And then this is one, two, three. This is one, two, three, four. One, two, three. I think this is probably a two. One, two. No, this is actually a three. So one, two, three, four. One, two. One, two, three, four. One, two, three. One, two, three, four. One, two, three. What? That looks so different. One, two, three, four. One, two, three. One, two, three, four. One, two, three. Ah, that's why. Yeah, it was different. I'm like, that doesn't look right. Um, one, two, three, four. One, two, three. One, two, three. One, two, three. One, two, three. One, two. Many. Go back one. One, two. One. My eyes are in that spot where I don't see it anymore. I'm just looking at stuff. Uh, I don't, it doesn't look good to me, but it's closer to this than it was originally, I guess. Um, okay. So, with that said, we can now conduct ourselves like this. I think that's good. Wait, nope. There we go. actually like this better than this. It's not the weapon that I wanted to make at the very beginning, but I actually like the way that this came out. It's weird. Pixel art is so interesting sometimes. Yeah, yeah. You know, now that I know that this is a thing, that's a doable thing, I think I'm going to do it this way. Right? I'm going to just go like this. I'm going to go here. Then I'm going to go like this. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but on this side. Then I'm just going to go like that. There we go. Then I'm just going to go like this. There we go. And I'll just go like that. Now that's annoying. What's missing here? Oh, okay. I see what the problem is. It's fine. Yeah, there we go. Now it's absolutely fine. I see what the issue was. There we go. Yeah, that's correct. Right? So now this is closer to what we needed. It's because this had this issue right over here. So we can actually just make up for that by putting this here. That's kind of what that should have been. Let's actually do it the correct way so we can have the colors set up right. There we go. Not a big fan of this part right here, but I'm kind of digging it. I'm kind of getting what it's putting down. Let's do some erasing here. 1, 2, 2. Oh, right. For circles, it's different. Back. Whoops. I'm acting circles doing isometric. It's a thing. Oops. Okay, good enough. Um, yeah, I think that's it. And then this now is too high. Okay. Yeah, that looks horrible. Yeesh. Yeah, it's a little bit better. Like if I just look at that part alone, it looks fine, right? Yeah. I think this is good. I like this. And then its relationship to right here. It's okay. So, oops, there we go. Okay, good. So, beautiful. Okay, that's two sides done. Hmm. Right. What time is it? Yeah, I think it's time to take a break. Been at this for a little bit. Um, oh, that's it. All right. That's enough for my log for today. I am going to stop the stream.